Hey there, I'm Cindy Renna, and this is episode 4. Last time on the podcast, we talked about the difference between preschool, with a hyphen, and preschool, the modern phenomenon that now exists. Today, we're going to unpack that idea a little bit by talking about how to nurture your preschooler's mind, or in other words, how to homeschool in the early years. So when we pulled our oldest out of public school at age 4, I found myself suddenly a homeschooler. Being very academic by nature, I thought I could just bring him home and do what the schools were doing. In fact, out of spite, I thought I would do even better, even more for my preschooler's mind. So I brought my moderately autistic little boy home and presented him with handwriting, phonics lessons, Saxon math, a felt map of the continents, and a multitude of online learning options. For all of you laughing right now, just know that I am rolling my eyes at my former self just as hard. But let's extend some grace to the newbie, huh? And remember, it was before I'd met Charlotte Mason. If you don't know who Charlotte Mason is, go ahead and check out episode 2 where I talk a little bit more about her. So my early homeschool years can be summed up in one phrase: too much, too soon. There is a natural process known as childhood development that we as parents are expected to work within the boundaries of. The preschool years are a special time to focus on certain activities. As I talked about earlier in episode 3, these can be summed up into the categories of mind, body, and soul. Although what I was teaching, or I should say attempting to teach, technically falls under the mind category, it does not necessarily fall under the preschooler's mind, and certainly not in the mind of a child with the many challenges connected to his autism at the time. It's not that what I was trying to do was bad. It's just that it was beside the point. For most 4-year-olds, especially our precious outside-the-box children, the foundation for learning is all that needs to be laid during the preschool years. This takes much longer for outside-the-box children than it does for typical children, so do not despair if your preschool years last longer than you expected. Proper learning will not, cannot, take place until it has a firm foundation to be built upon. If we look at education as a house we are building in our children, the preschool years must be for pouring the foundation, or the bricks will not be stable. How to nurture your preschooler's mind. Nurturing your preschooler's mind during the preschool years can be done by reading aloud literature and poetry, developing early math skills through play, and only when they're ready, introducing memory work, ABCs, and handwriting. Let's talk about preschool classics. I am referring to literature, poetry, and audiobooks. Be sure that your child's day is full of story and poetry. Try to schedule a few times throughout the day where you stop and snuggle up with your child to read. Read aloud time is a wonderful time to bond with your preschooler. Some of our favorite times to read are mid-morning, lunchtime, and bedtime. If the thought of reading multiple times a day overwhelms you, remember that audiobooks are an excellent way to get more reading in. I have to throw a little caution out here. Not all reading is good reading. I know you've probably heard it said, at least they're reading. It doesn't really matter what they're reading, as long as they're reading. But that's not always the case. You've got to think that you're filling your child's mind, you're enticing their appetites, so to speak. And this season is prime time for littles to pick up books at the library featuring their favorite TV characters and other, let's be honest, twaddle. Twaddle is a fun word that means books of lesser quality, and I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on that in just a few weeks. Some of that is fine, especially when they're just browsing on their own. But however, when you read aloud to them, you want to be sure that about 90% of the time is spent on something of worthy quality. Look for stories that are pleasant for you to read. Yes, it is important that you like the books that you choose for your child. And look for gorgeous illustrations that will fill their mind with wonder and awe. Filling your little one's mind with twaddle in the early years is no different than feeding him nothing but goldfish crackers for that time. He needs real mental sustenance, and that can only come through living ideas found in good books. Remember, you are training his affections, and if you give him wholesome ideas, he will crave wholesome ideas. If you give him twaddle, he will crave twaddle. The preschool years are the time to help him develop his reading taste buds. If you want some guidance in picking books, I've put together a book list for the preschool years with our favorite titles. I'm always updating it as I find new titles as well. It includes core classics, great reads, and books to read by occasion. You can head over to my website and grab your copy. You can find it in my shop. All right, let's move on to early math through play. Math should be introduced as a living activity. After all, we use math every day in one way or another, so a child should be taught why it is important. Here are a few fun ways to introduce math and some of our favorites. Board games. Choose games that teach amounts, matching, or require you to count spaces. Some of our favorites are matching games, Candyland, Hi-Ho Cherry-O, Zingo, and Pop the Pig. Puzzles. Choose sturdy, beautifully illustrated puzzles. Hands down, our favorite brand is Crocodile Creek. Pattern blocks would also fall under puzzles. Our favorite blocks are made by Melissa and Doug. Calendar. Teach the days of the week, months of the year, and dates. Children love to learn the days of the week song. There are a few versions you can pick from. For the months of the year, we like to clap each month and jump on the current month. Melissa and Doug make the best daily magnetic calendar that I've found, but use your own personality to make this fun for your child. Grocery shopping. Yes, I'm suggesting that you take your preschooler shopping with you. However, if this is a struggle, and it certainly is for many outside the box kiddos, this can easily be played at home. Set up some of your food items with tags and shop your kitchen with your child. You could even use play money and make it more fun. Incorporate questions and requests that encourage your child to count. For example, you could say, "Mommy needs 3 cans of beans," and have your child get them. Checking items off a grocery list is also important, and you could discuss the price of items if your child is ready for all that. Even statements like, "Oh, that's too much for cereal. This cereal costs less," lay the foundation of necessary math skills. Cooking. Find a simple recipe. Muffins are a really great choice. And walk through each step with your child. Have your child count out the muffin liners into the pan, pour the ingredients into a measuring spoon, and set the timer. Be sure to point out when numbers come into play and how important it is to use right amounts. When they are ready. Some children are extra eager to start academics, so if that's the case with your child, then go ahead and start with memory work. Children can easily learn simple prayers, nursery songs, and poems by heart in the preschool years. This will happen naturally, and you shouldn't have to put any stress on learning these things. What's more important is being intentional about what your child is memorizing. We can all remember the theme song to our favorite TV show growing up, but wouldn't it be more nourishing to the soul if we were able to recite a short, beautiful poem? Our favorite to memorize early on is Rain by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's only 4 lines long. Read copious amounts of poetry to your child and choose a couple of your favorites to memorize over the year. ABCs. Buy 1 or 2 beautifully illustrated ABC books, but do not obsess over making the connections of each letter that the words begin with. Let this be an organic process. Sing the ABC song, but don't agonize over the child learning letters in a certain order. Invest in a nice set of magnetic letters. We love the Melissa and Doug set. If you can't tell, we are very big fans of Melissa and Doug's toys. And a medium-sized magnetic whiteboard for the child to play with. This should be a fun activity, never forced. Children, especially those who are read to often, will naturally want to know which letter is which and what sounds they make. Once he knows those things, he'll be interested to know what letters pushed together make words and so on. Even for the child with reading delays, this seems to be a natural, however labored, process. Charlotte Mason had a great quote on this. "Let the child alone, and he will learn the alphabet for himself. But few mothers can resist the pleasure of teaching it, and there is no reason why they should, for this kind of learning is no more than play to the child. And if the alphabet be taught to the little student, his appreciation of both form and sound will be cultivated. When should he begin? Whenever his box of letters begins to interest him. The baby of 2 will often be able to name half a dozen letters, and there's nothing against it so long as the finding and naming of letters is a game to him. But he must not be urged, required to show off, teased to find letters when his heart is set on other play. Another thing you can introduce if your child is ready is handwriting. This is the only time I'm going to recommend a formal curriculum in the early years. A brilliantly designed multi-sensory program is Handwriting Without Tears. Now, we don't follow the program to the letter, but when your child is ready, I suggest that you buy the little workbook designed for preschoolers. I believe it's called Get Set for School, or maybe My First Book. I think they changed the name recently. And absolutely, you should buy the wood pieces to make the letters with that is sold by the same company. At your child's leisure, let them make the letters with the wood pieces, build the fun character they refer to as Map Man, and practice writing some letters. We use large Crayola washable crayons with the workbook. Don't allow your child to do sloppy work in this workbook when teaching handwriting. Remember, even one perfectly executed letter for the whole day is preferable to a whole page of slipshod work. All right, all together now. So to recap, here's the extent of your preschool child's academic schedule to nurture his mind. Literature, poetry, board games, puzzles, calendar, grocery shopping, cooking with mom, and if they are ready, memory work, ABCs, and handwriting. This gentle approach to academics in the early years will be fun and exciting for your child and for you. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Homeschooling Outside the Box. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.